Okay, here we are. Here we are. Um, First of all, I'd like to thank you all for joining us today for another brown bag session here at the Blockchain Professionals community. As we're getting closer to the end of the year, I'd like to take a moment and congratulate everyone on the upcoming holiday season. Your participation, curiosity, and support have made this community stronger than ever. And I'm very grateful to be sharing this space with you all. Today's session is something special. We're diving into the why and how of Web3 capabilities with our speaker, James, who is the developer relations engineer at Aztec. James, we will walk us through how Web3 standards and protocols are opening up new possibilities for collaboration, communication, and programmable finance. And also, James, we're happy to have you here, and we're very grateful that you dedicated some of your time to show up here at our stage, and I hope you're loving it so far.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Okay, I think we're good to start, but before, I'd like to introduce you to the audience, James, if you don't mind. We'll start with some opening questions that I prepared. Could you please share a bit about your journey into the Web3 and how you came to the focus on decentralized technologies?
Yeah, it's an interesting journey, and I guess given I've been around like some like different engineering fields, it might be worth quickly scouting over that. So yeah, my studies were in actually mechatronic engineering and computer science, so that was quite around robotics and mechanical systems, dynamics, modeling systems like that, which was I found quite interesting, and algorithms as well. But then I sort of went into sort of low-level software development, so embedded systems development. And I'm mentioning that because it sort of has a certain rigidity to it and structure to it that's quite different to the web development that we see over past decades. Then after doing a bit of that, I sort of realized the iPhone sort of came out, and that was in 2008, and there was a lot of demand for building iPhone apps. And I thought, actually, this is quite interesting. It's much quicker to have something in someone's hand and be able to iterate on it compared to like an embedded system, like some hardware product where the release cycles are much slower. And then now at around 2017, I heard about Ethereum, discovered it, fell down the rabbit hole, as everyone says. And it was this interesting mix of the code that required sort of a lot of integrity and was quite rigid in some respects, but was also able to be deployed and experimented on quite readily, but also had a lot at stake in terms of finance. So it was an interesting blend of things, just coming through that history of sort of engineering where I'm at today. And yeah, going from Ethereum into Aztec this year, I was like, what's missing? We need more privacy, and it's too hard for everyone to have to roll their own privacy. Then I decided to join Aztec at the beginning of this year.
Perfect. And I think, well, from your perspective, why are when we're talking about the privacy, why are the Web3 standards and protocols so crucial for the future collaborations and innovations, mainly when we're talking about the privacy?
Yeah, I can probably go deeper a bit later, but in a nutshell, I feel it's something that we basically assume with Web2 products. Like we sort of have this sense of privacy to some degree, albeit still heavily centralized, and our privacy is sort of not really with the centralized entity holding our data necessarily. So we have some sense as a product that when I post something or tweet something, unless I'm explicitly sharing it in a more public way, or if I'm sending a direct message, I have a sense of privacy of what's happening. When I pay for something with my credit card, I'm just assuming privacy. I'm not actually thinking about it. But when we came to building Web3 products, we kind of just said, okay, for this consensus mechanism to work, to get this high security we need with a decentralized network, we will be sort of foregoing privacy. Like we need transparency for this to work. And that's great to achieve certain capabilities, which is the decentralization capability, which we'll expand upon a bit later as to how that's useful. But then I look at Aztec and I see, look, now we can get privacy back whilst preserving decentralization, and do so in a do it once, do it right kind of way. Whereas currently, if you're trying to put privacy on an Ethereum smart contract, you're always, and I felt this myself, it's just you're sort of having to bend over backwards to try make that work, or you have to use something in a particular way to attempt to get some sense of privacy, but then you still might lose some trust assumptions in implementing that. And worse still, I've seen people rolling their own cryptography. So when I say roll your own crypto, it's referring to cryptography here, and that's just not advised. So yeah, I just feel it's right to get the right people to do the right job. And if they're doing that in a decentralized way, in an open way, what's there to complain about?
I see, James. I really do have a lot of questions for you personally, but I think we probably should dive into the screen sharing part, and I will allow you to take this stage. Everyone should be able to see your screen now, and I think we have a good question from the chat that would serve as a transition to the next topic we're going to be talking about. It is, could you tell us more about what Aztec do, what your company does, and we would love to listen your thoughts on that.
Okay.
I'll pass on the floor to you, James. I'll be duplicating interesting questions from the chat in case we have some, so don't worry about that.
Great. Yeah. I don't see the chat, so yeah, it'd be good to get them from you. Thank you. In a nutshell, what is Aztec? It's I sort of like starting with why first. So if it's okay, yeah, I will get to that maybe a bit later, and just start with basically I have a mix of slides from other talks that sort of piece together this narrative that I talk about. But I sort of try to say, I'm just going to keep the screens like this because I'll be jumping between presentations here. But if you can see this clearly enough, it's to say, like, when is a blockchain required? And this is sort of the essence of, why do people think about, say that they need decentralization, or where is it useful? Because it's certainly not worth adding a blockchain to something that doesn't need it. And we saw a lot of this in the earlier blockchain days, and maybe we still see it to some degree, where people see a new technology and just want to put it in their product. We see that with AI, but perhaps it's a bit more nuanced as to seeing, or a bit more clear to see what the value proposition is, or when it's not required. But for a blockchain, it's, people were putting blockchains on anything. So the essence of it that I found quite useful was sort of 4 simple questions to say, if you have, if you don't have a shared record, like you want to have a shared record of data, but that people can write to, but the people who are writing to that shared record don't trust each other, and they also don't have a trusted third party, then in that case, a blockchain may be able to can sort of solve this, or your product may require a blockchain. And that's a little abstract, I know, but it's just to say that there are cases like this where some products do have a trusted third party. And if the third party is sort of required for a certain business case, maybe it's agriculture and you need a third party to be auditing the quality of grain or something, then in that case, they're all sort of trusting that third party anyway. So it may be that a blockchain isn't particularly needed for that element of the industry or the solution that's being rendered. So that's just a handy sort of 4 questions, like a group of people writing to a shared data store. They might not trust each other, but they also don't have a trusted third party. Then a blockchain may make sense. Going to go into, I think here I just give a little example of, I tried to, just in another talk off the back, I could just use this one. Yeah. So off the back of that, I try to go into this explanation of what might an example product look like that uses sort of like a currency that isn't controlled by one person. So I understand the audience might be a mix of people who are already familiar with tokens in cryptocurrencies, but maybe there are some who've just heard of blockchain and maybe haven't gone as deep into the application. So in this example, I try to show that there could be something like a universal sports token for, let's say, classes, because this is actually a product that does exist in a centralized way, which is called, I think, Gym Pass or Fit Pass or something like that, where many gyms sign up to this platform to put their fitness classes on. And as a consumer, you go to this gym class app to find fitness classes near you, but you have this sort of freedom of choice to go to any gym once and spend your fitness classes. So this concept is sort of the same, but in a decentralized way with just the token side of it being reflected here. So in this case, a customer can hold a sports token, and that token can be spent at any facility that's interested in using them for redemption. So in this case, in the centralized case, it's Gym Pass that does that for them and lets people sort of buy credits and redeem them and redeem classes. But in this case, it's to say, well, if there's a decentralized token, that could be a way of doing it. Then it's a question of where do people buy the tokens from and how might they be balanced around. So there might be a small gym in a very busy high street that actually gets a lot of foot traffic. So maybe they end up being able to convince a lot of people to buy tokens, but actually the person who's bought maybe a 10 pack of tokens, they won't always be going to that small gym. They'll be going to the other gym. Or vice versa. You might have a large gym that gets a lot of traffic, but gets a lot of patronage and a lot of people spending tokens, but maybe not so much incidental foot traffic buying tokens from there. And so there would be like this secondary market to balance these tokens out, but the price would be sort of dictated by the cost of a class, cost of a fitness class at that gym. But the interesting thing is you could have just differences in price between the different venues depending on the facilities. But yeah, whether it's a one token per class or some other mechanism, it just becomes like a currency specific to that domain. And these things could, I just sort of use this as an example to sort of explain how that could work. I do have a more complicated example that I might skip for now, but maybe I'm not sure if there's any questions at this point.
There are some questions in the chat,
Okay.
James, but I think we can leave them for the later.
Oh, actually, sorry, I see comments here. Is that the group chat you're talking about? I've just seen these now.
Yes.
Okay, great. Some good questions there. So when I guess fell into Ethereum or discovered sort of decentralization as a concept and blockchains as a concept, Ethereum stood out to me as something that was sort of had legs in terms of the technical product, but also as an ecosystem. So I like to just refer to this diagram from the recent DevCon that was earlier this year around Ethereum mainnet being the sort of high security part, which is the sort of public, transparent blockchain that is high security, and then the L2s around it that sort of make the Ethereum ecosystem. So this is layer 1 Ethereum, and then all the layer 2s make up what is Ethereum as a whole. So I really like this sort of multifaceted layer 2 because you can get different attributes based on the layer 2 that you want. So Aztec would be one of these, being a privacy layer 2. And others might be more around scaling, but still with transparency. So that could be good for certain public trades, but not as good for, say, a business where people just want to protect their transactions and not have them visible to the whole world. So that's, I just sort of like that element of Ethereum as a whole being L1 and the L2s around it. That they go on in this speech to mention the different decentralizedness, if you will, how decentralized each of the L2s are, because some of them certainly are not that decentralized. And so they have defined this metric of stage 0, stage 1, and stage 2 levels of decentralization. So whilst you're on stage 0 and even stage 1, you still have some trust assumptions where you need to trust the entity that's running that layer 2 to some degree, whereas a stage 2 layer 2 is completely decentralized and you don't need to trust a single sort of entity, and you just rely on the network security that is built on top of the layer 1 security. And that's something that Aztec aims to do from launch. I believe that it will be very decentralized, if not completely decentralized. from day one. So that's, I think, an important attribute when it comes to seeking a solution that you want decentralization for. But we can go in again as to say if and when decentralization makes sense, and happy to talk some questions about that. Good question about mass adoption. So I do still think like, and I talk with my hands a lot, so I do see it as Web 2, we had privacy. Web 3, we get decentralization, but we lose privacy. And then with Aztec, we get privacy and decentralization. So we sort of come back to having what we assumed when the way people build today on Web 2 apps, it's just you like anyone can innovate and ideate, create apps, create applications. And having worked in the app development space for a while, yeah, people can just create a private database. You just assume this, and that's how you begin your business. And you can many entrepreneurs can do many applications, and that's what I think mass adoption is. It's a lot of experimentation, people building things, and then others, the consumers, downloading them and using them, and obviously not getting burnt by them. It's important. Whereas I think we don't see that in Web 3 at the moment because we don't have privacy. We can't have as much everyday applications. So when we talk about mainstream mass adoption and going beyond the enthusiasts, I think the enthusiasts are into DeFi, which works in Web 3. And I say Web 3, I know some people might not use that term all the time, but I use it a lot. It's just easier. So with with these finance applications and DeFi in general, NFTs, yes, they're going to be for the enthusiasts because it's a bit clunky and techy at the moment. It's not frictionless to use, but it's getting a lot better. But still, I think the fundamental thing stopping it is the absence of good privacy, like easy privacy for any entrepreneur to have an idea, spin up a dApp, and be able to deliver the same kind of a product that a Web 2 developer will. Because I think that's the tension here, that we don't have entrepreneurs readily spinning up ideas as dApps. They're doing it more so as Web 2 applications. The other thing, I believe, is around, I sort of broke down the viability here. Maybe we'll skip the security part and jump into this. So this sequence of graph is just to talk about the viability side of things. The cost. So on layer 1 over here, we have the costs. It's a funny graph. So over here, I'm saying the high costs is to the right, and then the number of viable applications is the vertical graph. So whilst the costs are high, the number of viable applications are relatively small. When we had roll-ups and other layer 2s giving scaling, we could get more applications. So that's roughly, like these aren't specific numbers, but it just makes sense that this is this is an intuitive curve of what I believe would happen. It becomes more exponential here. Once the cost per transaction goes to 0, you've got something that resembles a Web 2 app at this point, and then entrepreneurs that are building Web 2 apps today can just as readily build a Web 3 app once the costs are over here. And of course, with applications come users. So again, just an indicative sort of perspective of scale there and how it could be exponential as the cost goes down. Today we see, like for those in the space that might be familiar with DeFi, actually going even further is DeFi front running. So when there is decentralized financial applications, people doing trading, you then have to, you have to be mindful of being front run. So if you're having a good opportunity to buy something quite cheap, there are people who are sitting there watching watching the pool where transactions are, first deployed and then processed before they're processed. They're watching those and trying to get ahead of those trades. And to do that, they're just going to outbid you for how much you spent to make that transaction. And it becomes almost a bidding war to get the value of a lucrative trade. And those kind of games, again, I'm not really interested in those games. I don't play them. But what I understand is that people spend a lot per transaction to do that. And so layer 1 is fine for them because there's a reward, like a greater reward waiting for those people. Same with hyped up NFT drops. If someone says an NFT is dropping soon, the first 1,000 get this thing, people will pay a lot per transaction to get their transactions in first. And then you're going down from that. So this is where it's quite wild, and maybe not many people are there, but those who have a lot of crypto to burn are probably there spending a lot per transaction to get more. Something like a high value asset transfer, like maybe a ENS domain name or some other high value NFT, you will be prepared to spend maybe $10 to $100 for the transaction if it's a really high value asset on L1. You say, like, I want the security on layer one, I want to use this on layer one mainnet Ethereum. So then you'll spend that kind of cost. But you wouldn't do that with casual gaming, for example. So this is where rollups come in. Layer twos generally, you can get cheaper transactions, and this has gone down since I actually made this talk, which was a few years ago. Yeah, you can get. Yeah, the idea is that casual gaming is around here. So let's go on to what I look at here is, I mean, at the time I was working on a BLS particular scaling project, but sort of the point remains as rollups become more performant and cheaper based on also the protocol becoming cheaper. Like for those who are following it technically, the sharding or having blobs on layer one that let layer twos make cheaper transactions effectively. That also has brought the cost per transaction down on those layer twos. And Aztec's doing the same. We're sort of rolling up and using blobs for some of that data to make the cost cheaper. And so, yeah, we can get to applications like this where microfinance for developing economies would become viable, because right now they're absolutely not. But as the cost goes to sort of sub-cent transactions or less, if you start to be sort of innovative with smart wallets and do sort of sponsored transactions, then yeah, then we can start to get to more applications there. I think I'll leave that one at that. Yeah, and I guess to sort of, yeah, you sort of roll up to L1 security, but you have L2 for scaling. And I like this picture just to say, if anyone's seen sort of a high voltage against a piece of wood, it sort of does this thing like lightning where it's just kind of burning through the wood from both sides. And I feel that's what's happening now. We've got a lot of real world problems that are sort of looking to use blockchain. Then you've got Web3 solutions that maybe haven't quite found the niche, but at some point I'd like to think it will reach. And then if you've seen these videos, when that reaches, you get this spark across it and you say, that's finally a really good real world use case with a really good product proposition using Web3 technology. And that's where it's going to make sense. And then you're going to have heaps of users off that. And then like with any startup, we see imitation sort of takes its course and you get a lot of similar things competing in the same industry, but then also similar things in other industries. So I'd like to think that's coming soon when these when privacy enables that kind of greater innovation. I'm not sure if we have some questions here. I've just got some comments from the chat. I'm not sure if I'm still getting more.
I think we're at the point, James, where everyone's carefully listening to you. I do have streaming at the different platform. We are a community, and if I have questions from there, I'll pass on questions to you. For now, we've got some questions from Alik. They are related to the quantum computing. If we want to talk about that, I could project some of them to the screen. And the first one was Alec was curious about your thoughts on the quantum computing, and he also referred to the last Google's project. Do you have you heard about that project?
Yeah, I looked into it
as well.
Yeah, to give a little summary, they sort of proved it against a particular problem. I forget the name of the problem, but it was something that they said that a quantum computer could solve this problem in something like 5 minutes. This Willow processor, if we're calling it that, or quantum computer, which I think it had 7 qubits. In the past, I think we've had like 1 qubit with some experiments, and then it's done 3 and 5, but then it found 7 qubits to be more stable, which was quite interesting, which was, I think people weren't maybe expecting that at first. But I did watch a video on this, and I found it quite fascinating that by having more qubits, you could then also kind of calibrate for them. So for those qubits that were a little bit maybe off in a sense, or kind of maybe leaning a certain way, for lack of a better way of explaining it, they could compensate that for that in a second round. So amongst the whole thing, you would get more correct answers. So yeah, with that 7-qubit quantum computer that was Willow. Again, I'm not sure if we're calling it a chip or a processor, or if there's a better word for it, but they did this thing in 5 minutes that would take, was it many thousands of years, or for a regular computer or a high-powered single-core computer to do, or just a regular processor to do. So coming to what that means for I guess blockchain, I think I'm going to just even go back a step and even think, what does that mean for encryption? Like when we have something that we've assumed is private because we've encrypted it, maybe we stored it on the cloud and we've put it in maybe Google Drive, maybe we put it in Dropbox or something, where we think, okay, I've encrypted this locally with whatever encryption algorithm my computer used at the time for zipping that file. And then I've stored that up, put that online somewhere. If someone has had access to that encrypted file, in the future, a quantum computer could go and brute force that very quickly to decrypt that data. So it's I think primarily scary on that front, or at least people should be mindful of what they think might be encrypted if they're putting it online. To bring it into the Web3 space, think about decentralized storage. If you have something stored in IPFS that's encrypted, that's sort of, if the network, presuming the network stays around forever, that encrypted file is there forever. So in the future, or maybe already, someone's downloaded it, and one day with a quantum computer, they could come to decrypt that data. So it is an interesting thought there when storing things forever in decentralized storage. When it comes to blockchains, I think it's more around what does it take to, I guess, do a type of attack on a network. Like when you, like a 51% attack is one type of attack. And I think for this, they're saying, how long does it take to do the SHA? Like for Bitcoin, it's the SHA algorithm. I won't go too much into that, but it's this algorithm to say, how do I randomly pick nodes? And it's to do this computation that effectively means one person might get the answer before another, and it's somewhat random based on your processing power. But if you have something like a quantum computer, then you can just create the longest chain, and the longest chain becomes the correct chain. So if you've got a quantum computer, you can just write a whole lot of blocks very quickly because you're solving this, what's meant to be a proof of work challenge, very quickly. And then, then the networks kind of gets, I'm not going to say destroyed, but really becomes hard to trust at that point. So I think the algorithms used for this are sort of important. And I think prior to this point, there's been a lot of talk and research around quantum resistant algorithms and cryptography generally. But it's something that I know this industry is aware of, and be quite interesting to see what people fear or what people gravitate towards.
James, I think as you're getting these questions, you're finding out more about our audience and community members. As you can see, we are on the track of all the trends. And, we've got another question that asks. It's now more general. So it reflects on the challenges and opportunities that Web3 technologies are facing today. It says Web3 often aims to fix problems from Web2. James, in your view, which areas are making the most progress and which still have the most room for the improvement?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm definitely all for the right tool for the right job. And if someone's trying to put a blockchain or a decentralization on something that doesn't need it, I'll be the first to say it probably doesn't need a blockchain. I might say it doesn't need a blockchain now and work towards one later. So to say where might it be needed, I sort of lean towards just problems with centralization. The other way I phrase it is sort of power concentration. So like in all the things we know about human behavior and power, like we just never seem to have some benevolent dictator that will do things right. At some point, if there's power in their control, that seems to um, yeah, go awry in some way, shape, or form. So whatever helps us function as a society without needing to concentrate power too much, I think is valuable for society long term. For a small example, what could that be? I mean, we look at the finance industry, banking. I mean, that's where this began. Someone asked me back in 2017, 2018, who didn't know about Bitcoin or blockchain. They said, "Oh, blockchain, explain it to me in like 5 or 7 words or whatever they said." And I thought, how do you summarize Bitcoin in 7 words? And then I thought, well, where did it come from? Again, thinking of the why, it was a response to the GFC. That was my short summary. If I'm to use it in 4 words, it was people were frustrated with, with what the global financial crisis brought. A lot of people, it stressed a lot of people out. It caused a lot of problems, and that was just people with power, like sort of the finance industry, um, sort of use. I won't go over the GFC again, but it's basically Bitcoin was sort of born out of that to say, like, this is terrible. Why do we keep letting this happen? Okay, let's start our own currency. What could that look like? And it's not like it was a new concept. Digital money and the like had been, and network decentralized money had been spoken about since maybe as far back as '98. I think there was some website that kept that there. So yeah, a store of value that exists outside of any entity and doesn't have any sort of controller or God mode power, then great. I think that's where this sort of begins. I'm not sure if that sort of started to answer some of the question, but
well, I think it does. And there goes another question, James. You're, I think someone wants to dive into the privacy technology and asking you that, well, you're working at Aztec, which focuses on privacy in Web3, right? How do you see privacy innovations like zero knowledge proofs and etc. shaping decentralized systems in the next few years?
yeah, that's a great question. Like the abstract view is what I sort of said before, where it will be privacy returning to decentralized applications. So I think that's the first step, where we just have privacy. We don't have to think anything about it. We build like we were building the Web 2. Coming to the specifics of zero knowledge proofs and how those are used in applications, I mean, I can get quite technical with that, but maybe I'll just use an example that exists, and it's called ZK Passport. It's a company that uses the language that Aztec has developed called Noir, that is basically the syntax is like Rust, but it lets you write programs that can be used to generate proofs of something without revealing the data. So someone can be assured when they verify your proof that you're in possession of some data. Maybe it's, say, with the passport example, that I'm from Australia and some signature authority, like the government, has signed for my passport to say in my digital passport, like my NFC chip on my passport, I am from Australia and that signature is valid. I can generate a proof of that I'm Australian without having to give all my passport details. Obviously, not obviously, but the passport authority will sign for all the data in my passport, but I can just choose to say, here is the public input that is my country, and the others I want to keep private. And so I'm going to use Noir, the Noir program written for this, to generate a proof, and that proof can then be used in an application. So for DevCon, that was used for the Southeast Asian conference, in Thailand, and anyone from Southeast Asia could get a discounted ticket. So if they generated a proof using their passport that they were from some country nearby, they could submit that proof to the ticketing platform, and the platform would be automatically giving them a discount because they were local to the conference. So I think that's just a great application of zero knowledge proofs, and very pragmatic one. Maybe to jump straight into the next question here. Are there any particular projects, trends, or tools in the Web3 space right now that excite you the most. Gonna have to say ZK Passport for a project. That's pretty cool. Transport tools in the Web3 space more generally. I've always liked Fileverse. They're doing some very cool things in terms of a decentralized Google Drive. I think for me, anything that sort of tries to sort of slowly relinquish the centralized data stores that we all depend on is a good thing. So yeah, Fileverse, I really like that one. In terms of trends, yeah, I guess I sort of look both at the sort of, I'm going to say micro level of Web3 trends, but then also the macro level of digital trends in general, and just those applications that are beyond Web3. I think I just want to see more of those, which is always a difficult tension to say that, you know, the criticism that blockchains often get is that it's a hammer looking for a nail. And I definitely question myself when I do that, when I think, okay, what do I sort of need this for? And, you know, does it make sense to have this as a decentralized application? Like, yeah, I just want to see more things that can benefit people. But I've always thought about community currencies in some way, just the way that someone can create a Facebook group, for example, or a meetup group, or all these, whatever platform allows you to just very quickly, in one click of a button and a few text fields, you've created a group that is immediately accessible to many users, whatever the application or platform. I think creating a token or even as types of smart contracts should be just as simple. So I know there are some tools that like to do that. I know Steve Bartlett does Third Web that tries to make these things more accessible. There's other tools that do that. So I think from the application developer point of view, that's lowering that entry barrier to deploying things in the on blockchains like Ethereum. When it comes to technologies, then I think wallets are quite handy. They need to get better as well, but that's something that's work in progress. Both the smart contract wallets as well as the applications that serve wallets, or that wallets are built on. Jumping to another question here. What advice would you give to developers or enthusiasts who want to build projects using Web3 tools but feel overwhelmed by the learning curve? 100% agree. It can be quite a lot. And I sort of needed to, off the back of one contract doing app development, I thought, okay, I need to just spend my time getting into this. And it is quite an investment because it's like where to begin. And like, I sort of also like to think of what am I learning now and where can I apply that when? That's also another gap because some people could learn about the technology, learn about projects in the space. And for them, if they're in finance, maybe they're interested in the trading side of things. But I guess that wasn't me. So I was more of the developer. I thought, okay, I need to learn how to write an Ethereum smart contract. I need to learn Solidity. Then I needed to go under the hood a little bit and think, okay, this isn't just a computer running software. This is the Ethereum virtual machine. This is, a shared state on a public ledger or a public blockchain. Like, how do I, get on top of all of this? And it's just, all I can say is it's one day at a time. What helped me was finding a group. There was conveniently, there was a local group that met up every week. And this is a shout out to Boki Buba, who would run these weekly workshops. And I just every week turned up, and then I was following along, reading a lot, practicing a bit. And then I came to thinking, oh, actually, what I've learned one week, I wonder if I can just put it together and reflect it back the next week. So I was trying that. So beyond just learning, I was trying to then teach the same content I'd learned. A couple of years ago, I then moved from Sydney to London, and I didn't find the same kind of thing here. So I just started a group, and we meet up every week. Been off the last few weeks. It's been some travel, and it's around Christmas now. But yeah, we've been meeting up many weeks. I think we're up to workshop 80 plus 70 to 80 workshop number at the moment. And that's another way, just some cadence, some regularity to your learning, and trying to explain what you've learned to someone else is very beneficial with any type of learning. So it might be overwhelming, but it just takes time. People who study computer science do so for 3. I mean, I did for 5 years with engineering. So learning something takes a lot of time, and then mastering it obviously takes a good number of hours as well. So you might not necessarily find it in a university course, although maybe doing computer science helps. But as a developer, maybe who's already graduated and already coding, then just more time will get you there. It's just the same question still showing.
The same person, James, the same person is asking. He got the tips, but he's asking for the resources as well that you would recommend to uh, get up to the speed with the product goals and the tools like those used at the Aztec.
Yeah, so specific to Aztec, I mean, we have a great link. There's many repositories, but Awesome Noir, that's specifically Merkle trees. So for Noir, the language, we've got Awesome Noir. Let's pull that up. And we've also got Aztec. It's just Awesome Aztec is the other one. So yeah, Awesome Noir, Awesome Aztec. I'm not sure if I can share them here, but yeah, if you go to GitHub for Aztec Protocol, you'll find Awesome Aztec there, which has some resources. But generally, from the Aztec page itself, you can go Start Building. That takes you to the docs. You'll see in the bottom left-hand preview there. So I'll open that up. So this is for Aztec. Maybe I'll make the distinction between Aztec, which is the network, like Ethereum, it's a network, and Aztec is a layer 2, versus Noir, which is the domain-specific language. So, like Solidity is the language for Ethereum smart contracts, Noir is the language for Aztec contracts. So, and likewise, that has the docs as well. So that's the starting point. We've got getting started. We link to quick start guides straight away. So yeah, we can get quite technical if we go down this path. But yeah, generally that's between Noir the language and Aztec the network. That's where you can sort of find a lot. The GitHub repos have both Awesome Noir inside Noirlang and Awesome Aztec inside Aztec protocol. So there's those two there. Okay, so we've got another question here. If you could recommend one skill, if you could recommend one skill or mindset for developers or builders entering Web3 space, what would it be? Okay, so we do have a lot of builders here. I thought maybe it was a mix of some more business people, but yeah, if you're a business person out there and maybe not a developer, feel free to ask your questions. This is not a developer only workshop. It's about all professionals from different industries. So I'd really like to hear from people in other industries as well if they're curious or have any reservations. Please air those as well. But yeah, to answer this one skill or mindset for developers entering the Web3 space, I think if you're a developer or builder, like an entrepreneur for your own product, then thinking about the interoperability of your product is, I think, a big piece of this. In a sense, maybe we can look at content and think about how people not only create content that might be just good for what they want to communicate, and for better or for worse, they lean into virality. They say, okay, how can I make this shorter? How can I make it meme worthy? And how can I get people to reply to this more? I'm not saying it's the best thing that we are, posting things, what we like influencers or people creating content are leaning into engagement farming more so than actual content. Maybe that's a tension we also have to think about when building a product. But to bring it back to sort of more concrete terms, if the app is solving a problem and helping someone do something, that's sort of general advice to keep in mind. So does the attribute of decentralization bring you something for your product, for your community that you didn't have before? Just one second. Oops. That's okay. I know that I recently met at an event in London, an Olympian who does the triple jump. She posts frequent workout videos or goals that she's achieving, and they're both inspirational for others watching, but also just shows her progress and her training and what she's doing. And some of those she can make into collectibles. I'm not sure if everything's a collectible, but she's really lent into what's possible with owning her own distribution of digital assets, and I think that's a great use case. So yeah, I guess to answer the question, it's to think about the use case, think about what you're building and who it will help, and that's it helps focus the development, I think, because on the other hand, a bit like that diagram I showed before, I think it's this one. Let's see, this one. So right here, it's very on the right hand side here, it's very easy to build a lot of things and think, oh, I'm just going to build all these interesting things, and I think that's great to experiment with, and you should not hinder that kind of divergent experimentation. Keep building, keep experimenting with different things, but at some point, if you want that to stick and sort of reach a real world problem, then you've got to think from the other way, be like, what problem does someone have, and can this solve it for them, and try to make that sort of meet in the middle there. So yeah, building in Web3, it's high level. Keep in mind the general product rules and goals. From the development point of view, be mindful of interoperability and thinking about competition. It's a little bit different to a Web2 startup. You're not trying to reduce the entry barrier to competitors. It's almost like you're wanting people to interface with you. You want people to be able to engage with your product, which is quite the opposite to what Web2 companies seek to do and what investors advise their Web2 companies. So yeah, the fit in the mindset here is that interoperability is a plus, not a minus. Having people engage with your product is definitely a plus.
James, this live stream is going to be recorded and stored at our platforms, and we don't have any questions from the business side yet, but I definitely think that we should do some talking on that, and I think we could together facilitate this conversation. Many businesses, they do still view Web3 as experimental, right? And what do you think is the strongest business case for adopting Web3 capabilities today? And probably what companies think about is where should they start from?
Yeah. So I think it depends on the size of the company. I think is a big factor here. I learned when speaking with the I think chairperson or sort of lead of the Ethereum Enterprise Alliance, and what they had mentioned about Ethereum and supporting companies who are building on Ethereum. They said the big companies, the enterprises out there, they probably share that mindset of it being a bit early and a bit hard to build on. And a big reason for that, I understood, was because of the lack of support. Like they sort of expect a dedicated, like internally, they allocate a dedicated support team for the product, and they almost expect that on the other side, like someone who they can call, almost, who they can contact and say, I have this problem with whatever, help me. And so that's sort of maybe the level of service the Ethereum projects don't yet resemble, whereas a big company, or like say if they're dealing with AWS, there's definitely going to be teams just waiting to support Google or be Google or Amazon, whatever the company, there'll be large teams ready to support people building on them. So I think that's one part regarding the large businesses. Just trying to recall the first part of your question. Maybe could you repeat the first part? Was it about?
Sorry, yeah, I was saying that many businesses, enterprise still views Web3 as experimental, and I was asking about the strongest business case for adopting Web3, right? And if you have them, maybe you could share some tangible example of how, I don't know, of a cost or operational efficiency, right?
Yeah, I think that's a good that's a good framing of it. It's generally people companies will experiment with this, and it, from what I understood of some integrators, so there were companies that were doing integrations of I'm just going to say Web3 into different companies, and they had to exactly prove that. They had to say, will this save me money, save me time, or improve I think to use, say, the example of the Olympian again, like they're probably saving on their marketing budget because they have some dedicated followers who feel, at least, even if it's not physical, that they're in possession of something that creator has directly given them. So there's something very meaningful about that, the direct peer-to-peerness of it. I mean, it's one thing to maybe get a message from an influencer on a certain platform, but to say, actually, here's a digital asset they've effectively signed for, it becomes like digital memorabilia. I think that's quite important, this person-to-person depth of connection you can get when something of value is very directly given to an audience member. Um, Other applications. I feel I jumped to many points, and I try to recall back where we were. The
It's all good.
Yeah, trying to think of some others. Mm-hmm. Oh,
Sorry. Yeah, I was saying it's all good, James. Don't worry about that.
yeah, yeah.
Uh,
So, mm-hmm.
the we just got a question probably from the enterprise. They're asking James, what you think are the most significant ROIs, return on investments, opportunities for business when they're moving from the decentralized systems and well, it's very general question, and
Yeah,
they're asking how quickly can you see the results? How quickly
gotcha.
can you expect to see the results?
Yeah, okay, good question. So, yeah, in terms of operational efficiency, I think the integrations are a clear one. So, where there's something that you wish to be presenting publicly and having people interoperate with, doing that on a blockchain, especially when it comes to programmable money, for lack of for an easy way to put it, yeah, a blockchain can sort of quite quickly give that to you. So you could write a smart contract. So you capture your business logic first, and then you bring that into a smart contract. Say it's on L1 Ethereum for some reason, or a layer two that you have assessed. So there's some obviously a bit of pre-work to assess where you want to deploy your smart contract and where do you want the value effectively to be captured. And then yeah, sorry, I keep drifting as to where this goes. So yeah, there's that side of things to say where your solution will exist, and then when it exists to say I want this thing to be public and visible and also interactable, able to be interacted with by others. That's the sort of benefit you get by being on Web3. You don't have to necessarily once you've captured your business logic and created your smart contract that reflects the what we call ABI, application binary interface, so the low level interface to this smart contract, once you define that and written it and deployed it, that's how everyone will interface with it. You don't need to, like, it's for better or for worse, depending on the application, you don't need to permission people to use it or not. You don't have to give them API keys to say, here's how you can now access our service to do this. You don't need to worry about any of that because your smart contract exists on a decentralized network, and the logic that both involves your business logic and value and money. And it can be just be USDC, like often the boring cases are actually quite effective. That is there for everyone to interface with without permission. Which again, it might be a bit scary for some enterprises at first to think, oh wait, anyone can interface with our business logic, we can't block them. You can always put in ways of controlling that if needed for the application. But if you're sort of default open, and if someone becomes a bad actor, or if your business logic has a problem with it, then of course, yeah, you might want some overrides at first, and that will make sense. So the interoperability play, I think, is very valuable because you don't have to keep individually peer-to-peer sharing these interfaces. Now, that was just an example of one business doing that for its users. When it comes to other businesses also deploying a solution and wanting people to interface with it, if everyone is on the same platform, which is this programmable money platform called Ethereum, then you get this interoperability, all the layer twos and having proofs go between them. You get basically you get this multiplication factor of interfaces just being able to talk to each other without needing to do individual bridges between them. So if I had 3 different products and they each had their own interface, and as a fourth, I need to create 1, 2, like I need an interface per thing I want to interface with. But if we were all talking the same language using the same APIs, all I need is sort of connectors between them to say, yeah, I can just talk to that protocol and that protocol and that protocol all in the one program without needing separate translations between them. I can just have my logic talk to all their logic. And that's where I think a lot of the scaling will come, or actually does come at this point, but only within DeFi. So that's why the expression DeFi Legos is quite interesting, because someone can create a token and everyone who uses a token knows what that interface will be. And others who want to create a pooling mechanism or a lending protocol, they can create that thing, but then it can be deployed and used for any type of ERC20 token, for example. So we've seen that interoperability sort of serve the specific domain of DeFi, but I think that will also be the case for applications beyond DeFi as well. So that could be, again, leaning into Aztec with privacy. I know I've still got that tab open. Yeah, so leaning into Aztec with privacy, it means when there are certain widgets that are written in a privacy-preserving way, those can be used by others and get the benefits of basically this multiplying factor of all of these widgets being used together, but also still preserving privacy. Whereas, yeah, on other platforms, it might just expose everything. Okay, how can companies use Web3 to gain a competitive advantage in their industry?
Yeah, I think in this case we could elaborate on I don't know whether we can name it. Some of the companies, for example, I know that Nike is using NFTs for the crypto kicks program. I think they're creating verifiable ownership of like limited edition sneakers, and it kind of increases their I don't know brand value, customer engagement.
Yeah,
So I think you could give out some more valuable examples for us.
yeah, I think this I feel falls under the same category of sort of direct to consumer kind of value. Um, right now, obviously, physical products go to different stores, and then you buy a shoe, but unless it's got a limited number, print, whatever that's come from the artist, then it's a yeah. Yeah, I'm actually not sure about shoes specifically, but I understand there's some scarcity to them. Not sure if it's to the degree of unique numbers, but that would be interesting. But yeah, there was a product back in I think 2018 that I don't know if it's still doing that, but it was leaning into that manufacturing of for manufacturers of high value physical assets to integrate something in the production process that gave a unique code, and then that would be correlated with a digital asset that says you're in possession of this. I knew of some other project that was doing the same thing. So these are being explored, have been explored for a few years now, and maybe they're, obviously Nike. I think there was some other platforms doing, high value digital assets. To go to a different domain and maybe a more concrete example that I'd worked on, this was there was a couple of things around this. I guess the agricultural industry is roughly where this stands. One of them being more of an experimental project for finance for pig farmers. So people who are currently unbanked. So it's a different type of industry. It's not a wealthy consumer spending on a niche product. It's literally someone whose livelihood is being very good at raising pigs and growing them and selling them, and that's their family business, and they do that well where they are. But they, given it's a small business in a sort of rural community, they don't maybe have access to finance they don't have access to finance. So the proposed solution that I think was backed by or financed by the UN at least was to was it UNESCO? Yeah. Anyway, there was some finance by a philanthropic organization as well towards the UN sustainability goals, towards helping those farmers gain access to finance in some form. It did come down to a bit of record keeping, so being able to track data with the asset, in this case the pig, and to say, was there a unique tag on the pig that was somehow verified, and then from there, were they maintaining the pig well? Were they feeding it well? If it got sick, did they give it medicine? What were they feeding it? And just capturing that data in some way. Obviously, that did rely on them having some smartphone or some other means of capturing a digital image and submitting it. But that all became part of a digital asset that could then a bank could recognize and say, actually, yes, we recognize this log is quite genuine in what it's proving, and therefore will issue an amount of finance proportionate to the assets that they've shown here. And so a pig farmer could then say, I want to expand my fence. I need to buy all this material and labor to build out this fence. But they might not have been able to afford to do it at the scale they wanted, so they might have to do it piecemeal. But with finance, they can just do it once, do it right, and build this out build out their farming area better and buy the resources they need for more stock, and then just do things better. That, in the West we take for granted with finance that businesses can get loans and get finance to do more things, but that's harder when you're at a smaller scale in a rural community in other countries. So that was an interesting example. The other one being around agriculture and grain, where the farmers and there was some intermediate storage facility where they would be mixing the different grains to then have a larger bulk amount of grain to sell to larger industry players, like I guess bread manufacturers, or if it were rice, for example. So there was a way to track the farmer's asset from the beginning through to when it was bought. And the problem being solved there was the access to, not so much access, but the payment terms were normally quite bad for the farmers, in that they would part with their grain that they'd spent the year or the season farming and harvested, send it on its way, but they don't have access to the money from that until it's bought by the last aggregated buyer, which was, that was my takeaway from it, that there was just very long delay from when they parted with their asset to when they actually got paid for it. And so this helps solve that problem by having some traceability and tracking of the quality of the asset from when it moved hands to begin with and when it went from there. So then a financier could come in and finance that farmer and pay them up front, pay them when they parted with their goods, and then track it all along the way, such that when it is sold as a piece of a larger sale, they could then get their money back, and then a small, obviously, profit on top of that for taking that business risk. But yeah, that was a more concrete example that existed.
Thank you, James. I loved hearing about your experience and insights. And I think we're very close to wrapping up. And I have a question that I like asking our speakers, whoever comes here to present on our stage. Well, you are in this field for a long time now, and I'm pretty sure you're getting asked a lot of good questions and also weird questions. And so I would really finally like to know, what's one Web3 myth you would love to debunk for those who are new to this space?
One Web3 myth. I think when people get into blockchain, they hear about blockchain and they look at every blockchain and then assume some parity between a blockchain and a blockchain. Unfortunately, that's a bit of a myth. Like, just because something is a blockchain doesn't mean it's the same as any other blockchain. And it's very hard to know that at the beginning. So that's why I would say it's a myth to the new person entering the space. Having security guarantees is important, and being able to see that up front is quite hard. So the myth is not all blockchains are built equally.
Okay, I see, James. Thank you. I don't see any questions from, let me check, at any of our platforms. James, is there anything else that you'd like to share with us today, or could share some opportunities from Aztec for us in terms of the
Yeah, I guess.
community
Yeah, I
collaboration?
mean, I don't know if I should stop the screen sharing, or you can reduce it there on this side. But yeah, it's I guess just to summarize the sort of the journey that I keep in my mind is that With Web 2, we have privacy. Everyone's building with this assumption of some degree of privacy. With Web 3, it's awesome. We've got decentralization, but we don't have privacy. We just need both. Let's go there. Let's get decentralization and privacy. And then we can innovate just like we do currently with Web 2 applications. So the entrepreneurs shouldn't have to think this is a blockchain, this is decentralization. Should ideally manifest the capability at the product level, which I think is where some of the new businesses who lean into that, I think would be quite successful to just try surface those benefits to the product. So yeah, keep a product mindset, explore new technologies, and yeah, let's make this happen.
Thank you, James. Well, huge thanks to James for today's insightful session on Web3 capabilities. We truly appreciate the real world examples, practical insights, and your time spent with our community today. It is invaluable. We're looking forward to see you at our future events. James, we host community days. It's in the mid of the June. It's 5 days long event regularly, and you're automatically invited to speak there. It's going to be a huge event, and we really, really do hope to see you there. Well, and let's. I wish you a wonderful holiday season on behalf of our community, and once again, we truly appreciate having you here. Thank you so much for your time.
Great, thanks, Brooke. It's been great to be here, and I'm looking forward to next time.
Okay, VR community, we are wrapping up. Thank you for your attendance. Thank you for your time as well. We are hoping to see you at our next Brown Bag sessions. And if you'd like to find James on LinkedIn or anywhere, I think you could share some of the. I could share some of his personal contacts for the networking afterwards, or you could screen share and give us the QR code or whatever.
It's basically my name. So on LinkedIn, you'll find me, James Zaki. On Twitter, it's James_Zaki. But yeah, feel free to drop us a message.
Then perfect. We're ending the stream. See you guys.